Hello, everyone. Good evening. You guys look nice and comfortable and doing well. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm really grateful to be here. And my name is Vanessa Smith. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm definitely an alcoholic. I know it's a cliche, but it really is an honor and privilege to be up here. And I never thought that I could come up here and share my story. But it's just a way to give back, and I'm just so thankful for sobriety. I'm a little nervous, so just bear with me, but I'm just going to let God kind of take over. And my sobriety date is July the 12th of 2016. I have a sponsor, and I do sponsor women, and I'm willing to sponsor women. And I have a home group. It's the Principals group in Raleigh, and we meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 8 to 9. And we are located off of near Creech Road, and it's at the St. Joseph's Church, Catholic Church. So it's a wonderful group, just like this group, and it's just good to see everybody. So I'll do my best to share with y'all what it was like for me, what I was like, what happened to me, and what I'm like now. Like I said, I'm amazed that I can be up here today, because I had a really hard time with living and with drinking and with all kinds of different issues. And so to be up here and I've seen countless people, get sober and stay sober in AA, and I didn't think I could do that. But I was able to do that. I'm just forever grateful, and it's just such an awesome program. So I'll briefly share with you all. Basically, for me, I grew up. I was born in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Both of my parents were Marines, and exactly. I think the point of them being together was basically just to have me, because they divorced about 9 months later, and my mom took off, and, because they're two opposite types of people. So I don't know what was up with that, but they got married and had me and then got divorced. So, and I say all that because they're great people, but I say that because I think when I was young, I definitely felt, I think it started from that, when I was born, I just felt, different, I felt like, I was born in the wrong family. My mom, she was a hardcore Marine. She was an armor in the Marine Corps, and, so I grew up in that kind of that lifestyle, and there was drinking and stuff, but my mom did the best she could. She was a single mom, and I grew up with her primarily. So I had her as my primary caregiver for the longest time, and I didn't even see my dad again. I think my father actually got out of the Marine Corps about 4 years later and started his own life and got remarried, and they took me to Canada when I was 2, but I don't remember that. So I didn't see my father until I was about 8 years old, and I remember he came to Quantico. I guess they just got done getting their pilot's license in Johnston County, and my dad picked me up in this little plane, and I went on this little plane from Virginia to Johnston County. And I felt like I'd never met him before. It was really different. So I have, two different worlds. I have my mom's side of the family and my father's side of the family. And my mom's side of the family, we moved around a lot, but we would always go back home and visit in southern Indiana. And in my family I have drinkers. They love to party. They drank hard. They still do. And the Barnetts, and So I kind of grew up with that sort of thing, and I kind of moved around a lot. So I was really able to make friends easily. I was pretty popular. I was able to, but it just was hard as a kid to move around, and I would get, I'd make friends, and then I would get uprooted and things like that. And then I would go back to my dad's. I would fly as an unaccompanied minor, to my father's house in North Carolina, in Clayton, North Carolina, 4042 area. I guess that's Garner. But so I just remember growing up, it was crazy, so I didn't feel like I fit in. I felt like I was going, felt really like, just like I feel like I wish I grew up in a small town or something, that I could just have the same friends and the same, people that I knew and stuff like that. I never had that. And so anyway, I feel like from a young age, because of the two different family members, my dad's side of the family, my mom's side of the family, my dad's side of the family, they were a little more strict. They didn't really drink. They didn't drink, actually. My grandma and grandpa Smith would have a little bit of alcohol, but my father was adopted, stuff like that. That's not really blood, but that doesn't really matter. But the environment, when I would go from my mom's side of the family, where everybody smoked and drank and carried on and all this stuff, a lot of loud laughing, and a lot of fighting too, a lot of fights and stuff like that. And then I would go to my dad's side of the family, and I think that's where I kind of learned to stuff my feelings and things like that, I just didn't fit in very well. But I would put on a face like I did. It was like a survival mechanism. So that's kind of the way it was. And so here's the deal. When I took my first drink, I was in 7th or 8th grade. Anyway, Y2K, 1999. Anybody remember Y2K? Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a joke, But I couldn't wait to take a drink. And I remember drinking, it was a Coors Light, and I remember it was awesome. It was made me feel comfortable, made me feel grown up. I loved the taste of it from the get-go, from a kid. I think about my son is, he's 16 and a half, and then my other son's 11, and I think about my 16-year-old, and I was already doing all kinds of stuff at that age. When I was in 7th grade, it felt like I was 21. It's just a weird reality. But, so anyway, when I first took that drink, Y2K, it was in southern Indiana. My mom was going to get out of the Marine Corps. This is her third divorce and all this stuff. So anyway, I had a good childhood. There were some good times, and there were some really hard times. Some good times and some hard times. That doesn't mean that caused me to drink, because there's a lot of kids that I know that had it way worse. They didn't grow up alcoholic. So that is, it's just the way it was for me, my story or whatever. But I don't blame my alcoholism on my childhood or anything like that. So anyway, I ended up, I didn't start drinking like crazy back then. I do want to say too, when I was it was 2 years before I started drinking, so I was probably 11 or 12. We lived in Sarajevo. My mom, we were stationed there for a year. Not stationed there, but her husband at that time was stationed there, and he moved us out there, and I lived in Bosnia for a year. And so I have seen, the world and stuff like that when I was a little kid. But I remember going out there. It was right after the war, and I remember at that time it was kind of an existential time for me, where I was like, there is no God. How could there be a God if all these religions are fighting? And I kind of got a little bit, of I think I really felt bad for all them people, because I had a friend out there whose father died in the war. She was Muslim, And the reason why we were out there is because they were trying to help the Muslims at that time, like figure out learn how to use those GPSs and undetonate those landmines and stuff like that. And so I remember making friends with her, and it changed me. Because I was kind of bratty, and I was an only child until I was about 11. My dad and Misty in North Carolina had 2 other kids, and so anyway, my life kind of shifted at that time, and so I just want to say that because, and there were times too after that where I went to church. My mom, took me to Catholic church, and my father was a Baptist, and so I went to Baptist church. And there were times where I felt comfort and stuff and that stuff, but then there were other times where I just felt like, I don't know if there really is any kind of power, or anything like that. So I already had that kind of in my head. And so back to drinking. When I moved to, we moved again to, my mom got out of the Marine Corps, and we moved to Las Vegas, which is a terrible place to go here. Anyway, so I had to leave my friends and stuff like that, and that's when I started, my, MO was to drink and party and experiment with drugs and alcohol and boys, and so when when we moved to Las Vegas, I was pretty upset. So I had some emotional stuff. I didn't know how to cope. I was running away from my problems. My grades, well, I was doing pretty good then. I was in an advanced math class and stuff like that. So when I went to Vegas, I did start drinking again. That's when I found out I was pretty much an abnormal drinker, because, well, we would go to like Colby Davis's basement. All of us, group of us kids would go down there, and his dad's liquor cabinet was down there with the foosball table and all this stuff, and we were down there, and I remember that's where a lot of stuff happened. A lot of crazy stuff happened, just drinking and drugging, but I remember when we got out the liquor bottles, and I would take a shot, and then I would take another shot, and then another shot, and another shot. That didn't do anything to me. I was just kind of like, that didn't do anything to me. And of course, after about 8 shots, I passed out, and it was like 7 o'clock, and so then I was, hugging the toilet all night, and so that kind of happened, and I think that was in 8th or 9th grade, and then the next day I remember feeling like, well, I will do that again, or whatever, but it was just, I drank a little abnormally from the beginning. I started that whole thing about where I just didn't want to be in my own skin from a young age. And in high school, I had a lot of opportunities that I didn't pursue because of drinking and drugging and things like that. And I started to drink on the weekends pretty much through high school. And there was a thing that happened with my mother and I we got in a fight, and she went to jail, and I went to Child Haven, and I had to live there for a while, and then I got sent to my grandmother's in southern Illinois. And so when I went to Illinois, I lived with my grandmother, and my dad and Misty, they knew I was struggling, but they would try to help, but I didn't move with them until I was a senior in high school. But anyway, so I moved to maybe several different high schools throughout those years. And I barely passed high school, barely graduated. But my senior year, my stepmom, really, she sat down and she had a talk with me, a serious talk. And she was like, it's all about the choices that you make in life, Vanessa. You have your whole life ahead of you. You can, you have no idea what you're doing. Why don't you would you like to come live with us? We can help you. We'll help you get on your feet. We'll help you graduate and get in-state tuition. You live with us for a year. And, and I was pretty bad off then. And and apparently it was noticeable. But the fear was there. Of course, I didn't want to stop using. So, and the obsession was certainly there. I didn't really know it was there, but when I moved with them, I, quickly was seeking alcohol and couldn't get it because I was under the age. And my dad's house is way more strict. There was, I wasn't allowed to stay at friends' house. I wasn't allowed to do anything like I would bring friends over to their house. And I liked that because they had a nice house and I was like, okay, cool. But my dad, he was in law school, but he was like, stop that noise and they need to leave. And I was just like, But so that fighting Vanessa was there. And anyway, so I had a time, right? And I got caught with pot. I got in so much trouble with them. And my stepmother would say, Vanessa, you have addiction issues. What are you trying to take this or that? Something is she's trying to tell me, trying to give me hints that, be careful, you might have a problem. And here's why she said that, because they used to have a problem. And so my father would tell me, 3 things that are going to get you in trouble. He'd be like, girl, 3 things that are going to get you in trouble. Drugs, alcohol, and sex. 3 things that are going to get you in trouble. If you do these things, you are going to go through a really hard time. And he wasn't wrong. Or he was definitely right. And I just am amazed at that today. And but I was so mad at him back then. And little did I know, after I had kids, And it's interesting, my mom had me when she was 20, and then I had my son at 19. So anyway, that's the next thing that happened. I graduated high school, and I did well. I got my grades back up. I was able to graduate. I was taking freshman classes in my senior year, but I did it. I even went to JCC to take some credit classes to graduate. So, but I was the only person that drank moonshine, at prom. That's kind of, I had all these preppy people, and I was sought out the moonshine, and I found it, and I was very happy. So, North Carolina, I was like, I got to try that moonshine. By the way, I love the taste of alcohol. I love the taste of liquor. I loved wine, liquor, beer. Bourbon was my go-to, and I loved the way it made me feel. And so from a young, I was definitely hooked. And so when I graduated high school, I went to Johnson Community College. I started working at a restaurant, and I ended up meeting a guy, and he was a secret, and I ended up getting pregnant, and I was out of wedlock, and it was just a hard time. It was not good. And I was so scared and so embarrassed, and I didn't want to let them down, but they were like, you've ruined your life, but I loved that baby, and so I ended up, having a kid, and I was 19 years old, and I was so traumatized that I just left my family and didn't answer any of their calls, and I left for 7 years. And then, so when I hung out with this crowd of winners, I had my baby, and I thought that I had a lust for life. I wanted to do good in life. I wanted to have a good life. But drinking ruined all of that. I didn't know how to have a relationship. I didn't know how to, I was a kid taking care of a kid. I didn't know how to take care of a kid very well. But it's the alcohol that got in the way. It ruined so much, right? So I was started drinking after I had my child, and which I'm not proud of. But so it got so bad that the alcohol, it started. I started blacking out. So it got progressive, and I started blacking out to the point where I would act a little bit differently. I was violent. I mean, I've done a lot of really crazy stuff in a blackout, and it ended up sending me to the hospital. So I would just be at a bar, and then I would wake up in the hospital, and then they would just let me go. I would just be in the emergency room, and they were like, you can go now, and that's it. And so there were episodes where I would do that, and I started to drink daily because the crowd that I hung out with, that I chose to be around, they drank like I wanted to drink. They were like punk rockers, okay? So, and they drank and lived that lifestyle, and that's where why, I don't know, but I started to get very violent, and even the people that I was around that drank a lot didn't want to be around me. So my Chris Tolliver was my fiance, and he but he left me for another woman. So that made me drink, of course, and I had to move on out, and that was devastating. But I would leave me too. Looking back, I would absolutely do the same thing. You push somebody so hard, and you drink and you push them so hard, I will get pushed back, and I did, and I don't blame them. But I will say that it was really hard, and then so I shacked up with another guy and kind of took him hostage, because him and his family, they really liked me, and I kind of tried to quit drinking because I was trying to go back to school, but it didn't really work out too well. I would just have a tall boy and study and stuff like that, and anyway, Chris ended up getting cancer, so he ended up getting cancer. And he told me he had cancer because he couldn't swallow, esophageal cancer, and we had a kid, and Alex was about 3 years old. And Chris Tolliver tried to fight that cancer. He went through chemotherapy, radiation, and then he went through the surgery, and he survived. But on Mother's Day, he ended up passing away. And so I really regret that, because I really wasn't really there for him, and it tore me up that he died. It was a really traumatic experience. My stepmom called me and was like, Chris is dead, and I had just talked to him the day before. So that event, anything that happened in my life, I had to drink to cope. So I was devastated, and I left that guy, and I started to drink in the mornings, and tequila, just nasty stuff. And I started just wandering the streets and things like that, trying to find out where. So I wasn't really a fit mother, and and at that time, Chris and Chris's mom had Alex, and we would kind of switch them off. And so on Mother's Day, right before he died that evening, I did talk to Chris, and he was like, I wanted my son for Mother's Day. And Pat Tolliver was like, she didn't show up at that Temple Baptist Church there in wherever, I guess it's Smithfield or something, but she didn't show up. And I was very upset. And I called Chris after he had his surgery, like a selfish, crazy lady, and I was like, where's my son? And I was like, I'm glad you made it okay, I'm glad you survived. And he's like, I'm gonna get out of here as soon as possible, and I'm gonna take over Alex because I'm gonna get on disability. You're not fit, but I'm gonna let you see him and all this stuff. And that's what happened. And then he died, and I was just like, I can't believe it. This is not fair. This is so bad. And so I was really upset at Pat, and Pat was upset with me, and we both thought we were the cause of his death because, my God, we stressed him out so much. Oh, it's just terrible. And so that haunted me. Really, it did. And I would drink, and we would get, shots and 2 Chris, and all this stuff, and just, we would drink hard. And I showed up at the funeral completely plastered, and Pat Tolliver knew that. But but I ended up getting my son back at that time, and then so that's when my alcoholism got pretty bad, and I shacked up with my other son's dad, and he drank like I did, but we thought we were going to make it, and we thought we would try to, have a family, and it just didn't work. We both drank pretty badly, and I ended up, we ended up in Garner. We had a child, Andrew, and my alcoholism just got worse. It just progressed, and I was so lost. And so anyway, I left Adam we tried to quit drinking together. We tried to do, see how long we could go without drinking. And we had these kids, these young kids, and it was just so dark. But, so I decided to move to Charlotte, a geographical cure, and get a job, and that would cure everything, fix everything, right? Because I looked around and I saw all these normal people living their life, and, with cars and houses, and here I was with 2 kids, a broken home, and a shack, and a really bad car. Just living that life. So I went to Charlotte. It ended up bad because, of course, I drank, and I was in and out of the hospital. I went to the mental institution there because I started seeing things and smelling things, and it was, different. I started hallucinating. And there was a bad night because I was with the guy, and it got violent, and then it ended up affecting my son. So that hit bottom. I was like, that's not good. So that was in Charlotte, and I remember going into the bathroom, shutting the door, and I looked in the mirror at the ghost, and I was like, oh my God, what have I done? And I remember that was the time where I actually fell to my knees and prayed to God that I didn't believe in at that time, and was like, hey, I didn't say hey, but I just was like, if there is a God, please tell me what to do. Help. So that was the first time that I was like, okay, let's, and there was kind of like a vision that came, and it was a message that I don't think came from me. I know it didn't come from me. It was just like, go home, go to your dad and fess up, and just go home. And so I called Adam and had Adam and his dad come pick me up because I didn't have a car. And, and I went all through Charlotte just with an umbrella stroller with those kids. And and I had a lot of people that tried to help me. And, this isn't how mothers act. This isn't, throwing up in the bathtub and all this stuff. I had a woman come over and it was just I had a lot of people that were you can't drink, and so anyway, I went back home, and my father's house, and they welcomed me in, and they tried to help me. They tried to get me back on my feet, and I stopped drinking for a little while, and it was a month. But then I was trying to get a job, and my career back then was nursing assistant and waitress, and which are good jobs. But anyway, and I always worked. I always had to work. But so I was trying to get a job. I quit smoking pot, got all the stuff out of my system, and I got an opportunity to work at this hospice house in Smithfield, and, I got the job. They even said, we're going to offer you the position. And I was like, yay. I told my father we're going to have this job and everything. And so, but then they called me the next day. This was around December, because I started to kind of drink again. I started just having another, like at night, it was like around Christmas time. I would want to drink, to put the Christmas tree up and all this stuff, cook and all this. It started having more and more and more wine. And then I got a bottle and put it into the freezer and drank it in one day. And, I've done all of that's the way that I drank. And, so everything just got worse and worse and worse. So the last thing, and this is kind of what happened and what landed me in Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I got a call from the lady who was going to hire me, and she was like, we're not going to offer you the position. We called your references. They were like, you were terrible. And she did. She was like, good luck to you. She was like, I hope you can. She said, why did you give me these people? And I know the people that I didn't think they were going to call them. I didn't think they were going to call them. I just put some names down. I should have put a different number. Looking back, I was a little too honest back then. At the wrong timing, I was honest, and then I was very lied about everything where I should have been honest. I lied and I shouldn't have been. That's how bad I was. Thank God I wasn't unconstitutionally incapable of being honest. And when I read that in the big book, because that was my biggest problem, was dishonesty. So anyway, just to kind of fast forward, I didn't get that job. I ended up going to the bar. I was going to have only one drink, and I left my son at home to watch the show. He was like 7 years old. And I went to the corner bar, and I did not drive. I walked, because I think at that time my dad was letting me use his car. I used that car, his old Lexus, his old work car, and 1992. And I was like, yeah, I'm driving my dad's Lexus, 1992 Lexus. But anyway, I did not drive. I walked to the corner bar, and I had a beer and a shot, and then after that, a whole lot more. And I ended up, I don't know what I ended up doing. I don't know. I ended up in the middle of the road, in Aversboro Road and Vandora Springs or whatever, and the cops picked me up. And then I got in trouble. I got a felony and a misdemeanor and one night. And they took me to the hospital, and I woke up, and I was strapped down to the hospital bed, and I had a sitter. And yep. So that was it. And my father said, he picked me up, said, "Do you have a bad night?" "Yes, I think I'm an alcoholic." And he was like, "Yes, you are. Here, read this book." And he gave me his big book. And he waited for the right time to tell me that, because if he was, he didn't preach, he didn't do any of that. He just, the way that he did it was so perfect, because I wasn't going to hear anything any other time. Because I think he probably did try to tell me stuff, but I did read it. We went on, we said, we're going to go to Christmas. We would do this family reunion at the Harker's Island or whatever, and I read the book, the whole book, during that time, and I was kind of foggy, so reading was, but I do remember reading, more, this living the double life and being the actor, and wanting to put on some face, but then inside I knew how broken I was and I didn't deserve anything, so. And he said, what we're going to do is we're going to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. So he did. He took me to 90 meetings in 90 days. We didn't miss one day. And I got introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous. And for that, I'm forever grateful. But that was in 2013. So I didn't get sober in 2013. I got sober in 2016. So I tried to make it work. I think I was on my own plan of action. I did get a sponsor. I don't know. I didn't really take the steps. I did read the big book, and I knew that I could relate to that, and I knew that's where I needed to be, obviously. And I was obviously needed. I knew that I was an alcoholic, and that my life was unmanageable. And, but the honesty thing was the problem. I was open and willing, but I was not honest. I wasn't honest on my fourth and fifth step. You know, when you're writing that out and you come across some thoughts that you're like, well, I'll be okay without sharing that, you know. And it always led me to use something or somebody, and that always ended up making me go back out to a drink. And I never could say no, because I wasn't honest with myself. They would be like, hey, you want to smoke this? Or you want to drink? And I would say, yeah, sure, let's just do it. And then I would do it. And of course, I thought that it was like it made me feel better, you know. And with a head full of AA, you know, of course I was like, oh my God, this is worse. But I would pick up dirty chips and, like, you know, chips that are dirty. Well, I would lie about my clean time and my sober time. And I wouldn't get sober. I would not. And I watched everybody around me grow. And so anyway, so I would get like 6 months. I would get like 2 months or 3 months, and a lot of those were probably lies, because I couldn't stop smoking marijuana, I think. And so I had to fully concede to my innermost self that I was an alcoholic, and I could not have any other form of alcohol or drugs or anything. And I made that decision. You know, it was amazing how God works in my life, because he put people in my life. I have so many stories. I've had so many amazing experiences, and it's all led up. God has just shown me and led me the way by putting people in my life. You know, I used to party and use with this one girl, and she ended up moving to Florida, and something crazy happened to her, and she ended up getting clean and sober. And I talked to her before I got sober, and she was like, you remember when we were out there? And she was like, well, she's in another sister program or whatever, but she was like, you know, I'm done. I got sober. And I was like, well, I want to do that. I want to do that so bad. And so anyway, on July 11th, I drank, and I ended up going to a meeting because I almost burned down the kitchen. And I forgot the stove was on. And so I ended up going to the meeting, and it was at the Lakeside group on Monday nights in Garner. And I sat next to, like, Leonard and some of the old timers there. And I ended up getting my last white chip, you know. And so at that time, of course, you know, I went through a thing where I had to completely be honest with my sponsor. I was like, okay, I picked up my white chip. She's like, you did again. And I didn't think she was going to sponsor me again. And so I was worried about telling people that I had relapsed, like sickly worried. It's been 3 years. That's a long time when you're in active addiction. 3 years is a long time. And I was, you know, 29 and I was like, you know, I really want to get sober. And I didn't think I was going to be able to do it. But I was honest, and I went, had an honest desire, and I went through the steps and read the book with a sponsor, and did an honest and thorough fourth and fifth step. And I was, you know, I was honest with myself, to thine own self be true, about my drinking. And I remember being at my dad's beach house, and they said, you have a year, don't you? You almost have a year. And I said, yeah. And I wasn't going to say no, that I only have 90 days to them. See, there's just like the lies. And, but I really had a really 90 days, but I lied to them, and I felt so guilty. anyway, the next day they left, and they were like, you and the kids stay here, and then you guys can hit the road when you're done swimming. And I was like, okay. And I tried to call people in the program. Nobody answered, and I was really tore up that I lied to them. And I was like, well, I think I was sitting on a drink or something, but sorry, I get a little choked up. I was like watching my kids, and I was a little salty. And they were like, come play, Mom. And I'm like, no, leave me alone. You guys play. And but then I had another like little vision, like a little message. And it was like, go into the water and swim. And so I was like, all right, well, that'll get my mind off alcohol, right? So I did. And I remember testing the water, and I picked up this shell. It was like a perfect conch shell, and it didn't have an animal in it. And I felt like it was... I really felt like it was like a gift from God, and when I went, I proceeded to swim in the water, and I really felt peace, because it was just a knowing that as long as I was true to myself, I could tell them later, and I did when I made my amends. So doing that was powerful for me, because it gave me the strength to say no, and to be honest with myself is very humbling experience, because I was fighting that for a long time, and I could not stay sober, and I got more and more sick. So now we're in sobriety, and life is getting a lot better, and I'm starting to get some of that freedom by working the steps and working with a sponsor who I chose to be completely honest with, no matter what. And I was, and it worked. And so I was honest, open, and willing to do the steps, and I was able to stay clean and sober, and I was really grateful for that. And, I had a friend in 2018. She was a friend that she knew me when Chris passed away, and she's helped me over the years. She had lupus, and she's known me for years, and she and I were good friends, and we would check in on each other, but she was struggling, and she was such a great soul. She was tough and just had so much wisdom. She was a little bit younger than me. She had a daughter named Serenity, and my kids used to play together, and but she struggled in and out of the hospital, right? And so anyway, they actually had to take her esophagus out because of her disease was rejecting her organ. And so I remember visiting her, and we held hands, and I was able to be there for her and be present. And my kids were out there. I was there for 3 hours. The kids were just sitting out in the hall. They were angels. They didn't they didn't act up or anything. That's a miracle, right? So anyway, they and she woke up one time and was like, hey, are your kids here? And I was like, yeah. So we brought the kids in, and they got to see her, and she was able to talk with them. And she was like, sorry, Serenity's not here, and we'll get together and all this stuff. So I got to hold her hand, and she ended up passing away the next day. But I'm forever grateful, because I was able to be there before she did pass away, which is something that I wasn't able to do for Chris and stuff like that, and for many other family members. So this program has saved my life, and it gave me a second chance at life. So in AA, I've been able to enjoy being a part of, and AA taught me how to be a part of, and service has been a part of my program as well. I was grateful to do different service opportunities in AA and sponsor other women, and it has just changed my whole life. And I feel like, I can't go without saying that anyway, sponsorship has really helped me to just learn how to be connected with somebody, with another woman, and it's been such a joy to see people recover. And because I can't go without saying that, it's amazing because we get to our life is it's like a whole new life, because of sobriety and because of AA. It's crazy because once you take the drink away, you're still left with yourself. So slowly over time, I've been able to change, and it's just the freedom and the happiness is forever there, no matter what. And that is because of the connection that I have with God. And that's from, prayer and, the 10th and 11th step. And, page 87, upon awakening, the intuitive thoughts are not always there, but they are there. They are. And they're more so there than ever before. Then I'll have the opportunity to learn how to be an employee, show up, just like how I am in an AA meeting. I do that in work, on time or a little bit early. How can I be of service? Not being in myself like, I want to do something different, like I want to play guitar all day. No, I need to work. I'm here working. I'm working with other people, And so it's taught me to get outside of myself. Sponsorship has taught me to get outside of myself. That is the remedy for my disease, I tell you. Well, my mental obsession, physical allergy, and spiritual malady. So that and becoming a daughter and a mother and a friend, AA has given me all of that. I've been able to enjoy a full life, and I'm still enjoying it. It's hard sometimes, and I've had my ups and downs, and I'm not always perfect, but I always go to God and say, let me help me to love you more, help me to get back into that. So thank you for listening, and I'm so grateful for you all and for the opportunity to speak, and hope you all have a great night. Thanks.